Welcome to the RJI Futures Lab, where we help you make your organization more innovative. I'm Ruben Stern. This week, bringing data stories to life with virtual reality and a bit of humanity. Thanks to virtual reality technology, the next step for data visualization might be to let viewers move around inside the data. The Futures Lab's Tatiana Daria shows us how one developer is experimenting with the idea.
Imagine flying around New York City and being able to see its melting pot of race.
The idea is to see what it feels like to be among and inside that data, as opposed to looking at it from a map, which is a traditional map is sort of the more objective view, and we're trying a more subjective view.
The different colors stand for different races living in the city. That's all data from the U.S. Census.
If you're looking at something on a map, you can see it everywhere. You could see an entire country all at once. But when you're inside of a city, you see less. You might not see something that's happening 2 blocks away because there's a building between you and that. And also in exchange for that, when you give up that broader view, you have a more intimate view. So it's closer to what it feels like to be in that place.
While running small experiments with mapping data, Brian Chirles says the next step is to bring in a story.
Right now, you're sort of dropped into, I can drop you in any city in the world and say, okay, let's fly around and it's up to you to explore. But I would like to have a guide of sorts that says, okay, I'm going to bring you here and keep an eye out for this. I'm going to bring you here, keep an eye out for that. And kind of in between these sort of chapters of the storytelling, you can go explore. So find that kind of back and forth, that balance between being guided and being able to kind of look on your own.
It's that balance that he finds very challenging to strike in VR storytelling.
Technologically, it feels like video, right? Because it's a screen strapped to your face. But experientially, it's much closer to immersive theater or something like a theme park or a museum. So there's sort of alternating between the guided experience and the sort of open world free roaming experience, and you, based on the content you're trying to share, the story you're trying to tell, you pick which of those modes works for you.
For the Futures Lab, this is Tatiana Daria.
Another challenge is finding the best way for users to interact with the data objects they encounter, since the mouse and keyboard are less of an option in a virtual space. Data-driven projects can sometimes seem impersonal or cold, focusing on numbers rather than people. But Katie Park of the Washington Post says small touches can make graphic displays feel more personal.
I think that it's important when we're working on these big data-driven stories to just keep in mind that data does come from humans. It's something that a person makes, something that is a consequence of a person's actions.
Relating that to symbols is the challenge, says Katie Park.
We can do that by trying to personalize this as much as we can, by humanizing it, by placing it in a context that is relevant to the reader. And I just try to keep in mind either the human face behind the data at all times, or some element that makes them a little more than a dot on a map or a piece of a chart. Something that kind of makes you remember, like, this is a person, this is an individual.
Park recalls one particular story that she really struggled to visualize. It was looking at all the children who were killed in gun homicides in the year of the Newtown shooting.
I was looking at histograms, I was looking at some numbers over time, I was looking at the data on a map, and it just felt very cold and impersonal. Eventually, after trying a lot of different things and scrapping a lot of different things, I realized that I wanted to use the children's names. We couldn't get photos for every single child. There were, I think, 91 deaths that year. And we couldn't get a photo for each one, but we did have their name. We knew exactly what they were called when they were children.
Working in a team is also a big part of the process.
I always just go to my colleagues and kind of throw ideas around. And so for another project on children who died in Virginia daycares, I had tried a bunch of different ideas. I wasn't really happy, and after talking with two of my coworkers, we decided to represent that with like very simply illustrated children's clothes, onesies, like toddlers' clothes. And that, I mean, that was just something that after kicking around ideas for a while and talking about what's representative, what's meaningful, what do we think of when we think of a baby or think of a toddler, that was what we came up with.
Park says she works closely with reporters to incorporate graphics into story narratives. For the Futures Lab, this is Tatiana Daria.
Along with this video, you'll find links to some of the data projects shown in our report. And that's it for this update from the RJI Futures Lab. I'm Ruben Stern. We'll see you in the future.